In the technology industry, moments when the balance of power truly shifts are rare, but recent months have shown that the smartphone market is once again entering a phase of intense confrontation comparable to the early 2000s, when Apple and Samsung first collided head-on for global leadership. This year, Apple managed to regain its dominant position after several years of unstable sales by releasing the iPhone 17 Pro Max, a device that analysts are already calling the most successful iPhone since the iPhone X. According to Counterpoint Research and IDC, the launch was record-breaking. Demand exceeded expectations, especially in the US, Europe, and key Asian markets. And the model itself became a symbol that Apple is once again setting trends rather than chasing competitors. In Cupertino, this success is seen as a strategic comeback. After criticism for a lack of innovation and a prolonged design stagnation, the company found itself back at the center of attention, and the market responded with money. But it is precisely this success, according to industry sources, that became the trigger for an extremely tough reaction from Samsung. According to multiple industry insiders cited by South Korean and Japanese business media, Samsung Electronics leadership viewed the triumph of the iPhone 17 Pro Max not simply as another successful competitor release, but as a direct threat to its long-term position in the market. Inside the company, the idea is increasingly voiced that the strategy of incremental improvements and blurred flagship lineups no longer works, while Apple, on the contrary, has once again managed to create a benchmark smartphone around which the entire industry aligns. According to sources familiar with top management discussions, Samsung set a fundamentally new objective: to create a device that does not merely compete with the iPhone, but psychologically and technologically breaks its dominance, forcing Apple to play by someone else's rules. It is in this context that an internal project increasingly surfaces, informally referred to in conversations as the Korean Pro Max. This is not about literally copying the iPhone, but about creating a smartphone that in positioning, perception, and status becomes a direct mirror response to Apple. A conceptual Samsung 18 Pro Max, albeit under a different proprietary name. Sources claim that inside the company, this project is viewed as something more than just another Galaxy S flagship. It is meant to be a phone around which Samsung will build a new philosophy of the premium segment, as close in feel as possible to Apple's ecosystem products, but with an emphasis on technological superiority. According to insiders cited by Asia Nikkei and several European tech publications, Samsung's leadership has set a strict requirement. The device will not be released unless it can outperform the iPhone on key parameters: performance, battery life, display, cameras, and user experience. Moreover, the company is reportedly considering a scenario in which the project is completely shut down if the final product turns out to be merely competitive rather than dominant. This is an atypical approach for Samsung, which has traditionally released a wide range of models, covering the market through quantity and variety. Now the bet is on a single, precisely calculated strike. Sources also claim that in developing this device, Samsung is closely studying not only Apple, but also the experience of Xiaomi, which in recent years has openly built lineups that mirror iPhones while skillfully adding its own twists. Aggressive specifications, fast charging, and an emphasis on more for the same money. According to insiders, Samsung wants to take this approach but transfer it into the ultra-premium segment, where not only specification numbers matter, but also a sense of status, design, marketing narrative, and control over the ecosystem. Special attention, according to sources, is being paid to the processor and battery life, two weak points that Apple traditionally uses as weapons against Android flagships. Samsung is reportedly betting on a new generation of its own chips, as well as a redesigned power consumption architecture, in order to confidently surpass Apple in real-world usage scenarios for the first time in a long while, not just in synthetic benchmarks. Internal leaks also point to a revised approach to cameras, not a race for megapixels, but a focus on computational photography, video, and professional modes that are meant to turn the smartphone into a tool rather than just a camera. But perhaps the most interesting aspect is the strategic subtext of the entire project. According to analysts, Samsung understands that Apple wins not so much with hardware as with perception. The iPhone is not just a device, it is a symbol, and it is precisely this symbol that Samsung wants to attack. It is important to emphasize that officially, Samsung does not confirm the existence of such a project, and all such statements remain at the level of leaks and insider information. However, indirect signs suggest that the company is indeed preparing something bigger than another update to the Galaxy lineup. Reshuffles within development teams, increased R&D budgets, closed testing programs, and changes in the rhetoric of top executives in interviews all point, according to analysts, to preparation for a major strategic move. If sources are to be believed, 2026 could become a moment of truth. It is then that Samsung may be ready to present a device that will be its most direct and aggressive challenge to Apple in the past 10 years. It will not be an iPhone killer in the classic sense, but it could be the first Samsung smartphone created with a single purpose: to take away Apple's psychological and symbolic leadership in the premium segment. And if this plan works, the smartphone market may once again enter an era of real competition, where each release is not just an update, but part of a larger war for influence, money, and the minds of users. More and more analysts agree that what is happening around Samsung's new flagship project is not a spontaneous reaction to the success of the iPhone 17 Pro Max, but part of a much longer-term plan that has been taking shape inside the company for several years. According to sources close to Asian supply chains, Samsung was preparing in advance for the moment when Apple would regain unquestioned leadership, and it was precisely at that point that the Korean corporation was supposed to deliver its counterstrike. Internal documents briefly mentioned by South Korean business publications reportedly describe a turning point flagship scenario, a device meant to change the perception of the Samsung brand among the most demanding audience. The very audience that for years chose the iPhone not because of specifications, but because of a sense of control, stability, and premium status. Insiders claim that unlike previous years, when Samsung tried to be better in all parameters at once, the current strategy focuses on a carefully calibrated balance, as close as possible to Apple's philosophy, but with one fundamental difference: demonstrative technological superiority. This is not about revolutionary shapes or radical experiments, but about subtle details such as how the body feels in the hand, interface smoothness, camera response speed, and battery life in real-world conditions rather than laboratory tests. According to Samsung's leadership, these are precisely the nuances Apple has learned to sell better than anyone else, and this is where the Korean company wants to prove it can play on the same field, but with stronger cards. Against this backdrop, it is especially telling that inside Samsung, according to rumors, even a change in marketing approach is being discussed. Instead of the usual comparisons of bigger, faster, and more powerful, a scenario of quiet confidence is being considered, where the device does not shout about its superiority, but demonstrates it through use, step by step, taking trust away from the competitor. Analysts note that if Samsung truly commits to such a move, it would mark the most serious ideological shift the company has made in recent years. This is why 2026 is increasingly being described as the point at which the fate of a new stage in the Apple-Samsung confrontation could be decided. If the Korean corporation manages to execute its plan and release a flagship that does not merely compete with the iPhone, but imposes new standards on it, the smartphone market could once again enter a state of Cold War, where every release is a shot and every presentation is a signal to the world. And then the question will no longer be about who is faster or more powerful, but about who truly controls the future of the most important technology of the 21st century, the personal smartphone.